Great to have you with us this morning.
Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin this morning, of course, with that big news happening later today. Former President Trump set to appear in court to face new federal charges.
Trump will be arraigned in federal court this afternoon to face charges that were brought by special counsel Jack Smith that center on the 2020 election. The grand jury indicted the former president on 4 charges on Tuesday, including conspiracy to defraud the nation. Now, according to the indictment, former President Trump's actions to allegedly try to overturn the 2020 election helped fuel the January 6th attack on the Capitol. This marks the second federal indictment handed down to Trump this year. He was also indicted on state charges in New York, and officials in Georgia are expected to announce the results of their investigation into election interference by September 1st. We have a team covering all of this for us this morning. We're going to start with NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns in Bedminster, New Jersey, along with civil rights attorney and former prosecutor David Henderson to help us analyze these charges. Dasha, let's start with you. What can we expect to happen during today's arraignment? The former president is expected to be there in person, right?
Yeah, Joe, we're going to witness a pretty remarkable moment and a striking juxtaposition where we're going to see a former president arraigned on charges related to trying to overturn a U.S. election at the same time as he is currently running to become president once again. So this is going to be symbolically really significant. But in terms of the practical issue, what we're actually going to see today, it's going to be fairly mundane in terms of the proceeding here. We've seen this a few times before now. This is the third time we're going to be witnessing this. And it's going to be pretty similar to what we've seen the last 2 times, the first federal indictment and the state indictment as well, where he's going to travel from here in Bedminster to that courthouse in Washington, D.C. He is going to be processed. He's going to enter a plea. We expect that he will plead not guilty, and then he is going to be given conditions for his release. In the past, he hasn't really been restricted in any way. We expect that'll be the same again, although we don't know. This is, of course, a different case, a different judge. And again, with the former president, expect the unexpected. He might give an impromptu speech. We don't know what's going to happen. But again, we expect things to be fairly straightforward just in terms of the process here. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. But again, in terms of the historic moment, pretty monumental here, Joe.
So, David, ahead of this important hearing, you've got Trump's legal team already saying special counsel Jack Smith is being unrealistic by calling for a speedy trial to take place in 90 days. Let's listen to some of that argument here.
The special counsel or the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, has had 3 years to investigate this. To take President Trump to trial in 90 days, of course, is absurd. The question is, why do they want to do that? If you want to seek justice, then you need to offer President Trump an opportunity to get a hold of all the evidence and understand what the facts are.
So, David, what does need to happen in order to have a quick trial date here? And what are some of the challenges for both the prosecution and the defense?
Honestly, Joe, to get a quick trial date, you just got to convince the judge to give you one. Now, honestly, this is kind of like buying a used car when you go in and you ask for a lower price than you want to pay. I understand the other side is going to ask for a higher price. You're probably going to meet someplace in the middle. I think the likelihood of this case going in 90 days is almost non-existent. And I say that because I've tried over 80 cases or around 80 cases. I've never had one go on the first setting, normally not on the second or the third setting. They normally just get pushed back, even if you get your earlier trial date. So the defense does need some time to get ready. The judge will be respectful of that, but I can guarantee you this judge is not going to tolerate a lot of nonsense. I think this case is going to go to trial more quickly than most of us might expect to see it otherwise.
David, another issue is venue. The former president says he will not be able to get a fair trial in D.C. He's calling for officials to move the case to what he calls an unbiased state like West Virginia. We should note that's a state Trump won by nearly 40 points in 2020. But overall, does he have a valid argument here about being able to get a fair trial? What are the odds we actually see a change of venue here?
In short, Joe, no, he does not have a reasonable argument. And here's the reason why. Let's look at another recent high-profile case. When they were trying Derek Chauvin for murdering George Floyd, Derek Chauvin said, I can't get a fair trial here. Let's move it someplace else. And the judge asked, where are you going to move this case in this state that people haven't heard of it? And so when you start looking at D.C., you're talking about the same issue. Where are you going to go that people haven't heard about this case? Where are you going to go that people don't already have concerns about President Trump, opinions about President Trump. And keep in mind, the issue is not whether or not people might have a bias, but whether or not they can set that bias aside. Now, as I tell you all those things, the truth here is the defense team isn't going to say it, but they're not afraid of a D.C. jury. They're afraid of this D.C. judge. This D.C. judge is not going to allow the type of special treatment that former President Trump has received thus far, and she's not going to deal with a lot of nonsense. That's what they're most concerned about.
So, Dasha, as we've seen in New York, as we've seen in Florida, this is far from a typical arraignment. Talk to us about some of the security concerns here. The Secret Service put out a statement saying they're working with several branches of law enforcement to make sure the hearing is safe, which is no surprise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We expect that there will possibly be pro and anti-Trump protesters around the courthouse today. It's likely that this courthouse will see the highest security measures that it's ever seen, both in and outside the area. The statement the Secret Service spokesman put out said that they're working with the Metropolitan Police Department, U.S. Marshal Service, U.S. Capitol Police, Federal Protective Service. So you are going to see extremely heightened security measures to make sure that both the former president, this judge, of course, Jack Smith, and all of the folks that are in that area today are protected, as this could be, it's just an unpredictable situation, Joe.
And Dasha, once the hearing is done, what's next for Trump? Is he planning to hit the campaign trail?
Well, we've already seen multiple fundraising emails from his campaign and the groups supporting him. This is absolutely a moment that he's going to try to use to raise money, to rally support around him. He's going to be traveling to Alabama tomorrow to headline a GOP dinner there. So, yeah, he's hitting the campaign trail. He is going to be using this, as we've seen him in the past. This is a time when those numbers tend to spike. The poll numbers spike, the donation numbers spike. And this is the time to build that momentum for him in this primary. As crazy as that might seem, this indictment is not necessarily bad for him politically, Joe.
Dasha Burns and David Henderson, thank you both.
Now we're going to bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. Hello, friend. Good morning. Thanks for being here. So yesterday, the former president said he's never had so much support after these last charges were announced. I mean, it's early still, but there's no indication that that is incorrect. I mean, polls are still showing this support. Do you think there's any chance this indictment changes that? Does this eat away? Maybe perhaps another indictment in Georgia would eat away, or will it only amplify his support?
Great question, Savannah. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have a rearview mirror. And in that rearview mirror, the support for Donald Trump within the Republican Party has only been growing each time he has run into legal trouble. So if past his prologue, you can expect that at the very least, he'll basically hold his lead, perhaps expand it a little bit, maybe lose a little bit. But if you look at those numbers that you can see on the screen right now, I mean, he's at 54%. Ron DeSantis, who's in second place, is at 17%, basically, less than 1/3 of the support that Trump has right now.
Yeah, just such a large margin there. Speaking of DeSantis, I do want to talk about how his rivals are handling this. DeSantis and former Vice President Mike Pence, of course, Trump's former vice president, they had very different takes. We're seeing this kind of happen across the field, this disparity between people who kind of want to throw this support and people who are willing to just say it. First, let's listen to some of this and talk on the other side.
A D.C. jury would indict a ham sandwich and convict a ham sandwich if it was a Republican ham sandwich.
I'm going to make it clear to the American people, as I seek the Republican nomination, that despite what Donald Trump has said over the last 2.5 years, that I had no right to overturn the election.
You know, it's interesting, John, to watch these people who are in a political fight with the former president, but who still support in this way or take it out on the Justice Department. Pence is one of the few people who is actually calling him out. How is that impacting Pence's support among Republicans?
I mean, Mike Pence's support among Republicans is very low. There is some percentage of the GOP that looks at Mike Pence and says, what he did on January 6th was heroic. What he has said in the past, that basically he isn't using this word, but he's basically saying Trump is disqualified for being president. And people who agree also with his very conservative politics is a small group, but he's certainly got them. You mentioned this range of responses to Trump. I mean, it's just the relationship between your viability as a Republican primary candidate and your willingness to take Donald Trump on over January 6th is completely inverse. That is to say, those who are doing well are the ones that are not willing to do that, and those who are doing poorly are the ones like Mike Pence who have been very critical of him over January 6th.
And John, I mentioned just a second ago, rather than, directing any of this at Trump, a lot of this is coming to talk about the Justice Department, a weaponization of the justice system, a comparison between what's happening to the former president with the current president's son, Hunter Biden. Walk us through what we're seeing in response to that. I mean, the White House has said that the Justice Department carries out criminal investigations independently, but what does the Republican base think about that argument?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely red meat for the base, the idea that Joe Biden is using the government to, weaponizing the government to go after Donald Trump. Of course, there's no evidence of that. Biden, at least publicly, hasn't said anything about these investigations or these indictments. The White House has been really, I think, careful about not trying to add to any appearance or any fuel any fire that's going on. At the same time, there's a huge difference between Hunter Biden and Donald Trump in that Donald Trump was president of the United States when his acts were alleged to have occurred, or when the acts that are alleged to be crimes occurred. Hunter Biden, of course, holds actually no formal power in the United States, and there really is not. There's not any criminal case against Joe Biden, the president, over his relationship with his son. So, there's a real sort of imbalance in those two arguments right now. It's difficult to have anything happen in politics without it becoming much more partisan immediately.
John, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Central to the prosecution's case against Trump is an alleged scheme to use so-called fake electors to try and derail the electoral vote count held following the 2020 election. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson breaks down that alleged scheme for us.
You probably know how a presidential election works. Voters in all 50 states head to the polls to choose who they want as president. If enough voters back a certain candidate, that candidate gets electoral college votes from that state. The winner needs 270. That's the magic number.
Here's the road to 270.
So that's what you see on TV. You typically don't see what happens next because it's usually a formality, as members of the electoral college pick it up from there. Those members, called electors, are selected by state parties months before Election Day. After every presidential election in December, each state gathers together electors from whichever party won the popular vote in that state. Those folks meet and send an official certificate to the National Archives and to Congress. They look like these, and they basically say, okay, this is who gets our state's electoral college votes. It's pretty ceremonial. Except in 2020. That's when the former president and his allies got to work convincing loyalists in 7 states that they should back Republican electors in key battlegrounds won by the Democrat in the race, Joe Biden. The focus on Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania. Some of those so-called fake electors showed up at state capitals where the real electors were meeting. They even created phony certificates like the ones you see here. The goal, apparently, to send through this fake slate of electors to Congress, where the vice president presides over the official count. The thinking seemed to be that then VP Mike Pence could grant Mr. Trump the disputed electoral votes or send the issue back to the states, opening the door to keeping Mr. Trump in power. You probably know what happened next. Pence rejected the scheme, citing the Constitution.
President Donald J. Trump!
And Mr. Trump on the National Mall told his supporters the election was being stolen. It was not.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Remember, by that time, most of Mr. Trump's election challenges had been thrown out in court, and his own attorney general had declared no evidence of widespread fraud.
Our thanks to Hallie Jackson for that explainer. Defenders of the president do point to one historical moment as an argument for why they think the actions of Trump and his allies don't amount to a crime. In the 1960 election between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, the results in Hawaii were so close they couldn't pin down a winner by that mid-December meeting of electors. Now, at that meeting, both Republican and Democratic electors cast their votes. Eventually, the votes were retallied, with Kennedy declared the winner. The key difference, according to legal experts, the results in Hawaii back then were legitimately still in question by mid-December. Well, this time, the 7 states where the fake electors offered up their votes, those results were not.
Well, a Pennsylvania jury has sentenced the man responsible for the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history to death. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park reports on what happened in the courtroom and what survivors of the shooting had to say afterwards.
Jurors unanimously handing down a death sentence for Robert Bowers, who carried out the worst anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. The final phase of the trial coming to a close nearly 2 months after the same Pittsburgh jury found Bowers guilty on all 63 federal charges, including hate crimes for the murders of 11 worshipers at the Tree of Life synagogue in 2018. Bowers hardly reacted to the verdict, while survivors and family members of the victims say this day brings a measure of peace.
I feel like a weight has been lifted, and I can breathe a sigh of relief.
In the same room where they waited for updates on loved ones on the day of the shooting, the group reunited again and found comfort in each other.
We're all members of a club that we never chose to be members of, but we're all bonded for the rest of our lives.
Carol Black survived the bloodshed by hiding behind a metal door, but lost her brother in the attack.
If you can sum up in one word your emotion when the verdict was read, what would that be?
Relief. They came to the proper decision, in my opinion.
In a final push to spare his life, Bowers' defense team pointed to his troubled past, but prosecutors reminded jurors of the 11 lives violently stolen nearly 5 years ago, replaying chilling 911 calls from inside the synagogue that day as he gunned down worshipers during Shabbat services. The U.S. attorney saying Bowers targeted the congregants because they were Jewish.
The evidence in this trial proved that the defendant acted because of white supremacist, anti-Semitic, and bigoted views.
Our thanks to Kathy Park for that report. Well, the judge will formally sentence Robert Bowers to death at a hearing later this month.
Some wet weather is expected across the east over the next few days, putting flood warnings in effect for some areas. So let's get a check on your morning news now weather forecast.
Angie Lastman is here in studio. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. We had a pretty active 24 hours when it comes to rain across parts of the Midwest. And for that reason, we have already flood watches and flash flood warnings in effect this morning. And they're likely going to go throughout the morning, potentially into the afternoon hours, including places like St. Louis, Paducah, Huntsville. All of those areas seeing ample amounts of rain still working through and some really significant rainfall over the past day or so. You can see fairly active this morning as well. Some lightning and plenty of it focused right around that kind of state line of Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, even up into portions of Indiana. So an active start to the morning. But on the other hand, yes, all of this rain really bringing us a whole lot of it at one time means that flooding concerns will be there. But we're dealing with drought conditions in a lot of these places that have picked up the highest amounts of rain. So where you see that brighter red, extreme drought draped across parts of Missouri, up into Iowa, up into Nebraska, Kansas, and specifically for Missouri, they picked up a whole lot of rain in some of those very spots that really needed it. Agricultural areas, of course, are happy about this. You can see 7 inches of rain for Walnut, 8.65 inches of rain in Harris, Missouri. Columbia picked up 3.7. So that's why we have the flooding concerns. But on the other hand, good for that drought. Now, moving through the next 24 hours, we're going to continue to see some of that rain work into parts of the southeast. That's where the active weather will be through the day today. That means also the flooding and the severe weather, the strong storms that we could potentially see. Some of the northeast will pick up on some of these showers and thunderstorms through the day today and tomorrow. Really up and down the East Coast tomorrow, we'll have unsettled weather. Could bring some problems to you if you're planning on traveling for your Friday. So just an FYI on that. Meanwhile, we have flash flood risk in place in a couple of spots out towards the plains and across parts of the Rockies, north of the Rockies, I should say, and then across parts of the southeast and extending into the Midwest. Those same kind of areas where we once again will pick up on anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of rain widespread, but we could see localized amounts up to 4 inches. This does include major metros such as Atlanta, Nashville. So just a heads up on that. You'll have to deal with that throughout the day today. We also will see this afternoon and evening bring a risk of severe weather that does focus out towards places like Denver, North Platte, Scott City, too, where we could see strong wind gusts, large hail. Tornado risk is low. That goes for the southeast, too, and even parts of New England, but it's not zero, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Otherwise, the heavy rain could potentially lead to some slower travel today, not just today, though, into tomorrow, too, guys, and that finally will be out of the picture by the time the weekend rolls around. So there's your good news.
There we go. Nice weekend.
I love when you give us that. Thanks, Angie.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.